Your Excellency, Professor Alpha Conde, President of the Republic of Guinea, and the African Coordinator for Renewable Energy for the African continent, Your Excellencies, President of Togo, President of Liberia, dear friends and brother ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank you for inviting me to the opening of the Africa Day and to commend the African Union Commission, NEPAD, AFDP, and UNECA for organizing the African Pavilion and Africa Day, thus contributing to making African voice heard. I would like also to convey to you the greetings of His Excellency Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, President of Egypt and coordinator of CAHOSC, and his regrets for not being able to attend the COP and join you today due to pressing commitments that prevented him from attending. I would like to share with you some comments regarding African priorities for COP22 and the two African Continental Initiative on renewable energy and adaptation. I would like first to reaffirm that Paris Agreement aims at strengthening the implementation of the UNFCCC, including its principles, provisions, and objectives in order to deal more effectively with climate change. This is a point that we should not forget. We should not forget that Paris Agreement comes within the principles of the Convention. And we should remind ourselves from time to time, because there is a tendency to neglect the Convention. It is not Paris Agreement, is within the principle of the Convention. Secondly, it is being said that COP22 is an implementation COP, but it's also an African COP. It's on an African soil, so it is an African COP and an implementation COP. But as well, it is an adaptation COP. An adaptation must be operationalized and must find its way to the final decisions of the COP. So we need to underscore the need for the crystallization during COP22 of adaptation as an important outcome of Paris through tangible, concrete results, including the operationalization of the global goal on adaptation and pre-2020 finance target on adaptation. In this context, African priorities after Paris should comprise participating effectively and efficiently in shaping and designing Paris rulebook, focusing on strengthening the implementation of the Convention and preserving its relevance, well equipping African countries so that they would be able to implement Paris Agreement through fulfillment by developed countries of their pre-2020 commitment and pledges in order not to shift the burden of closing the emission gap to be on the shoulder of developing countries, and to ensure the provision of means of implementation, finance, technology, capacity building, and especially institutional capacity. Means of implementation are cornerstone to ensure success of Paris Agreement. Greater access to financial support, to mitigation and adaptation, as well as to technology, will generate confidence in developing country parties. The US $100 billion should be the floor and the starting point for more ambitious financial support post-2020 to help developing countries implement the agreement. Egypt, in assuming its responsibility for representing and defending the African interest with respect to climate change on both levels, heads of states and governments and ministerial, has led since 2015, has led African efforts with the African Group of Negotiators to develop an African adaptation initiative to scale up global support for adaptation and addressing loss and damages, in Africa, along with the African Renewable Energy Initiative, in order to reflect African leadership in addressing climate change and in contributing to the international efforts led by developed countries. Both initiatives have been launched by His Excellency Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, President of Egypt and coordinator of COP22 during COP21 in Paris last year. The two continental initiatives reflect a major shift in the way African countries are collectively working by complementing and going beyond negotiation positions and designing and formulating concrete and practical African-owned frameworks to focus African efforts on implementation in a manner that addresses African development challenges and responds to African needs. The challenge now is to design an efficient governance structure for both initiatives that ensure African participation and ownership, transparency, and good governance. In pursuance of its relentless efforts to define African interest, Egypt stands ready to help in any manner the operationalization of the two initiatives, based on Egypt's leadership, vested experience, and technical capacity in order to achieve prosperity for the countries and peoples of Africa. Thank you very much.